And, I know you know because I've heard it on your show before. I mean, we steal 100 to 300,000 children a year just here in this country, and we drain their blood and we mix it with a Passover bread, and then we throw the bodies into the slaughterhouses that we own, and we grind up all the bodies in the sausage and the hamburger. McDonald's is one of our favorite outlets, and the people, they eat it for breakfast, they eat their children for lunch, and, us Jews, we got to do what we do. The most important thing to remember between you, Pastor Wickstrom, and me, Rabbi Avi Finkelstein of New York, that we both have two fathers, and so that's why we look at the world in two different ways.
And we know that there's a massive collision that's going to take place between two forces, don't we?
Well, that's what your book says. Our book says that we're going to take over the world.
Well, I look at you...
You're doing a pretty good job right now.
Yes, you've done a pretty good job, but there's quite an awakening coming. And my father, who's not your father, my father Yahweh, who isn't your father, of course, your father is talked about by my father in John 8:44, stating that your father was Satan and that you're the descendant of Cain, who was the first murderer. And you know that's true because you teach it in your synagogue.
Well, that's true, but it's not for you Goyim to know. But right now it's too late. It's over for you white race. So that's why I'm speaking so honestly here, to bring it out into the open so that you can see it for what it is. You've been teaching the people real good, but they don't wake up, do they? You don't get a lot of followers, do they? Because you know why? They're scared of us Jews, because they don't want to be called anti-Semites, and they believe that we're the chosen people, and so that's why we can do whatever we want to do, and we can get away with it because the white men are cowards, and we go to the synagogue all the time and have some Manischewitz and dance the Hava Nagila.
It's interesting. I've told people for years and years, it's not that you Jews are hiding anything. You're coming right out on television, in the newspapers, on the radio, and you're telling the people exactly what you're going to do before you do it, and they're brain dead.
Well, we did a good job with the public school system. We got you to put all of your children in there. You notice that the Jew doesn't put his children in there. They go to the Hebrew Academy, where we teach them the real things, and then they go to the synagogue and they learn the real important things. But we send your kids to the public school. We even have you tax yourself from your property so that you never own your property. And so if you don't make your property tax, we're going to take your property. You can bet on that. And we have you put your kid in a 12-year babysitting is about all it does, because you don't learn anything. And then by that time, the kids, they get to be teenagers, and then we give them the music. Not that we really want to call it music, because, oy vey, that's not music. But they listen to that, and then they want to do what they want to do, and so we sell them drugs, and we make a lot of money off your children. Your children from cradle to grave. All we do is make money off of them. Your cattle, your goyim, the human cattle. Mazel tov.
It's interesting. Yes, I know what you call us, but you may call me Goyim, but I can call you devil, but I'm going to be calling you a good name because that's what you are.
Well, that's true.
Now, you see, Rabbi Finkelstein, in your synagogue out there in New York, do you have a lot of infighting with the other Jews, the Orthodox Jews and the other Jews? I mean, is there a lot of infighting for the money out there in New York? I've heard that there's a big inner war going on now with Jewry.
Well, we fight a little bit and we argue a little bit. Of course, that's the two most important things we do, is complain and get the gelt. And so what we do, we're not really fighting among ourselves because we're both going to make a lot of money. It's just who's going to make a little more on this deal and who's going to make a little more on that deal. The bottom line, though, is we have the Goyim. The Goyim does all the work. The Goyim makes all the stuff. He sells it to us for pennies. We're the wholesalers. We're the middlemen. We market way up and sell it to the other goyim on the retail side. There's an old saying in Yiddish that the reason that God made Gentiles is because somebody has to pay retail. It's not going to be the Jew for sure. The Jew doesn't pay retail. It's the goyim that pays retail. We buy wholesale.
Well, that's very interesting. I understand it, but I also know the bloodletting. I know that on your Passover, which isn't mine, that a lot of little children do disappear, and I do know that, and I know a lot of police departments and agencies have been informed, but you're very open. You're very open tonight. I'm very surprised that you're talking about the bloodletting of the little children, that you put their blood in the matzah balls, and that you eat it on sacrifice on Passover.
Well, there was a goyim that wrote a book about it back in the 30s. I forget his name at the moment. But anyway, he wrote the book. People didn't buy the book. People don't want to listen. We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, since down to Adam's time. We take the children of our enemy, which is the white race, and we bring them to the basements in the synagogues, where we drain the blood and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering, and so we do that, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies. And the bodies, we're not cannibals, so what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular thing, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem.
You know, I've got a question, and I yes, it is a problem. But you see, I've always wondered, how did you Jews ever get control of the i.e. Christian churches in this country? It's always baffled me to a varying degree, Rabbi Finkelstein. You know, you have your synagogue out there in New York on the East Coast, but I'm wondering, how did you ever totally get control of these Christian churches who at one time told their congregations to stay away from you Jews? How did that happen?
Well, you know, our father Lucifer, the number one thing of all the organizations out there on the earth that we would want to infiltrate and take over of you goyim, obviously would be the churches. So we attacked them first, and we attacked them most. And we infiltrated the Catholic Church right from the very beginning. Why do you think the Pope and all the cardinals and the bishops wear a yarmulke? The white race never figures this out. And so then we took all your books that had all your scriptures in there, and we burned them. And then we wrote them in Latin so that you couldn't understand them. But we understood Latin because we're Jews and we're smart and we're educated. But you goyim out there, you never teach yourself. You don't self-teach. You're always looking for somebody else to do it for you. So you wind up being schleppers all your life. And so anyway, 1,000 years later, when a bunch of the white race started to wake up in Europe, and they started to leave the Catholic Church, it was a terrible time because we weren't making as many shekels as we used to. So we had to put a stop to it. So the kings that we had in our hip pocket, just like the politicians in Washington, D.C. today, we paid them off to get you declared heretics so that they would crucify you and kill you. But there was too many of you, and the West was opening up, where the Jews opened up New York and Rio, and everybody started going west to the Americas. And so we had to come up with a Plan B. And Plan B, we formed the Jesuits. It was a nice boy, Ignatius Loyola, that he started the Jesuits. And so they decided to infiltrate all the Protestant churches out there. And as always, us Jews work our way to the top. And then we take over the money line, the shekel line, the most important line, the lifeline, the gold. and so we took that over.